Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. My name is Eve Daniels. I am a self-published children author, and more importantly for this conversation, I'm a student and a tutor for the last 10 years. And I'm joined by the lovely Stephanie Whitson. Would you like to say hi?
Right. Hello, everyone. Like she said, my name's Stephanie, and I'm also trying to be a published author, but I'm also been homeschooling since 2009. So I feel like I've done it all in the last decade.
Yeah, you've done a lot. You've done a lot. So we were just chit-chatting back screen, but do you want to say, so where is it that you live again? Because the rules for homeschooling and distance learning, they change from state to state.
Yes, that's correct. So I currently live in Oregon. I've lived here all my life, basically. And in Oregon, it's pretty simple to homeschool compared to some other states. So in Oregon, you just have to notify the school district that you reside in that you're going to be homeschooling, and you have to give your kids ages and their grade level, and that's it. And you have to do it within like the first 10 days that you're in the school district. So if you
so it's a pretty immediate process.
Yeah, there's nothing else other than like this piece of paper that you just have to fill out and then send it in, and then they'll sign that they receive the copy of it, make a copy, and send you back the original.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything else other than that. And then the only other thing that you have to do while you're homeschooling in Oregon is you have to do the standardized testing at the end of 3rd, 5th, 8th, and 10th grade.
Okay, so how old are your kids?
Oh, my kids, they are almost 8, 10, and 12.
Having a mom moment?
Yes, just a little bit. And so right now, 2nd grade, 5th grade, and my oldest, I promoted her to a couple of grade levels ahead. So she's doing all 9th grade level work. We recently had her IQ tested for a different reason, and we learned she's pretty smart. So she's able to do the work. So, which if she was in regular public school, I don't think any school district around here would allow a 12-year-old to be taking high school level classes.
Yeah, it's a very different conversation when you're homeschooling to jump ahead in course material versus if you're in an actual school, because then you have the peer aspect involved.
Right. So like she's doing all 9th grade level work. My middle daughter is doing mainly 5th grade level work with like 1 6th grade level like reading portion. Mm-hmm. And then my youngest one, he's a math whiz, so he's doing 4th grade level math, but all 2nd, 3rd grade level everything else. So, it's really great about homeschooling. You can cater to their needs per subject.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really liked about homeschooling in general, was just that you're able to either slow down or move ahead at your child's pace per subject.
Right, exactly. That's what we like about it. I mean, there's days like, all right, you guys are having a really bad day in math. We're good with anything else, or we're just going to take a day off, or we're going to watch learning videos today instead. Overall, if you get the work done overall in a month, I call it a good month. Yeah. So other than like registering as a homeschooler or having your kid register as a homeschooler, and you have to take the test at the end of those grades, and then your kid has to score a certain percentile in those grades, which is only like 13th percentile. So you have a lot of leeway. So, I mean, 13th percentile is not high. It's on the lower end of the spectrum.
The 13th percentile for a multiple choice test is completely possible by random sampling.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, if your kid knows how to, process elimination, I think we're good. And so here in Oregon, the regular testing is just on reading comprehension, vocab, and math. That's it. If you want to add the science, social studies, and another subject in there, you can, and then they will give you a more detailed report, but that's extra. But the basic is just the math and reading portion.
Okay, so those are optional. You don't have to do the test for science, social studies, any of that.
No, it's beneficial if you want to see where your child is in those in those subjects. If you're unable to know for your own sake, like if you're unable to know where they're at in those subjects, you can do those tests every year if you wanted to. But all Oregon requires is the math and reading portions, which
Okay.
it's not that hard. I was in the room with my daughter because I needed another parent supervisor in the room because they were a short one. So I volunteered, and there was 3 sections. They said it was going to take 4 hours. The kids were done in like an hour and a half, and they were all between 3rd and 4th grade levels. So it wasn't hard. I mean, even there was even a student there that didn't read, wasn't able to read yet.
Oh.
So the test administrator person, she just came and like read it out loud to him, and then which isn't unusual because there's kids that do better with oral testing, and if it's in their like individual education plan or they have a documented disability, they can get it orally done, and then they can answer you orally or just circle the answer, either one.
Huh.
So they're pretty
Well,
good
cool.
about doing that sort of thing or having extra time if they need it.
That's really cool because there's a lot of kids with different processing disorders too, where that might be something that they need.
Yeah.
And that's better because that way you can better accurately assess where a kid is as far as how much they know and how much they understand versus this one particular bit where, for example, if they had severe dyslexia or something like that, the reading is just going to slow them down.
Yeah. So my middle daughter, she's she's on the spectrum. She has autism spectrum disorder, like the higher functioning, like a few years ago would have been classified as Asperger's.
Yeah. They changed that classification system, right?
Yes, they changed it a few years ago to better, mainly for like insurance purposes, to better like classify everything in there. So like autism spectrum disorder has levels 1, 2, and 3. So level 3 is like nonverbal, non-communicative, can't like
function
independently. Yeah. Level 1 is you can function socially, you can function in the world. There's just some areas that you might need a little bit extra help socially. So like she's super smart, she's where she should be. Just she learns a little bit differently. She learns a lot more by like reading and then talking about it type thing, coloring, drawing, that sort of thing. And if she was in public school, they would have her have extra time to complete tests, or if there was an oral instruction, have the teacher come over and check to make sure she understood it, because sometimes her processing is takes a little bit extra time. But other than that, a lot of people that know her are like, "Are you sure she has autism? She's normal." Yes, I'm sure.
It's such a strange conversation, though, isn't it? I wish we would shift, and this is one of the advantages, I think, with homeschooling or even distance learning, which we'll get to the differences of that in a sec. But like, when you are able to change the conversation from like neurotypical to neuroatypical, which is, like, oh, this is how your brain's supposed to work and this is how your brain works if you're broken, to how does your brain work? Because neural processing is a completely misunderstood field, and it's one of those things where everyone's brain works a little differently. That's why even with normal kids, some kids study better with flashcards, some kids study better by reading and highlighting. It's just how your brain processes. I think if we can change that conversation, that'll help in schools. But just when you're working at home, to be able to pick up on those things, especially, I know a lot of parents have been in the comment sections on parent blogs have been frustrated because their child isn't learning the way that they learned, and they don't know how to help. Like one parent was saying that her kid never memorized his multiplication tables. That's like, well, they are teaching Common Core, which doesn't stress memorization, but also your kid may just learn that process differently.
Right. Yeah. So that was the difference from when, my oldest daughter was in public school and then she came out and then went back in. They, when she went back in, they switched to Common Core, which does your math a little bit differently. I mean, it's the same answer. It's just a lot more writing and a lot more steps to it.
Yeah.
And so, and then like she learned her math facts with flashcards, but my middle daughter and my son did not do flashcards well. But they learned the multiplication facts by me telling them, all right, you do your ones from 1 to 10, and then she does the twos and back and forth. And I did that for like months this summer when I would try to occupy them to stay still. And now, I mean, there's a few math facts they haven't memorized in like the 9s and 7s, but other than that, they're pretty good about the multiplication facts.
For me, it was 7 times 8. For 2 years, I could not, for the love of me, remember what 7 times 8 was. And my father would come in and tuck me into bed every night. Like, good night, I love you. What's 7 times 8? But the answer is 56. So, Dad, I got it.
To this day, I still mix up 9 times 3.
Oh, yeah.
I'm always 2 off.
Well, did your teachers ever do the finger thing with you too? Because that was always a weird thing.
My teachers never did that. But
do you know about the 9 fingers?
I do now because my husband taught my kids that because he was homeschooled from like 3rd grade until he graduated. And so he's like, why don't you just do this? You don't have to memorize it. And so
I'm trying to figure out how to do that on the screen because everything's flipped. So I'm like, wait, it's backwards. It's because that's 2 and then that's 7. You see what I mean? It's because the camera's flipped. It's impossible.
Right.
But yeah, but that's just the thing. Kids learn things differently, So it's like what works for one person's brain doesn't work for a different person's brain. And when you're able to teach at home, you can sort of tailor to that. And I think that's why a lot of parents are surprised by how short of an amount of time homeschooling takes for a lot of kids, because you can tailor it to what your kid needs. And your kid's not waiting around while the teacher has to explain it to 20 other kids.
Right, exactly. Like, we do like geography and social studies and history, like 2 different subjects, social studies and history, math, reading comprehension, vocabulary, and science. That's 7 different things. And we typically do them all in one day. And Ileana, my middle child, will get it done in like 2 hours. All of it.
Yeah. Done. All right, I'm bored now.
Right. My son will take longer because he doesn't like to write.
Oh, yeah.
He's 7,
Writing is hard, and then your hand hurts, and then you don't want to.
Like, I don't like writing. It makes my wrist hurt. I'm like, you do not have arthritis, dude. You're fine.
You do not have carpal tunnel yet.
Right? And so, yeah. So, but then my oldest daughter, she takes longer because she's using an online platform to do all her schooling. And so I tried telling her to do like certain topics or lessons, but some of them take longer than others and some take shorter. So now I just give her a time limit. Like, I want you to work on each subject for half an hour. And then I said, by the beginning of the year, I want you to work up to like 45 minutes per subject because you're in 9th grade and you should be able to be capable of doing it longer. It's all on Khan Academy that she's doing it. You've heard of that? Oh,
I like Khan Academy for a lot of subjects, not all subjects though.
No, I mean, she's doing like the math on there because that is our tension. She's a math person. My husband's a math person. It takes me a long time to read her sloppy handwriting and tell her where she got wrong, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I've never been a math person. So she does math. She's doing high school biology on there just to see if how she likes it. And then she's doing U.S. history on there.
Well, let me know if she needs help with the bio. History, she's on her own, but bio, hi.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's the family that I used to nanny for, the mother would struggle explaining the math sometimes because it's like, especially as we got further and further in the math, because it's like, I don't remember this.
Right.
I've done it in 13 years. But, and we've been talking a lot about homeschooling, but distance learning and homeschooling are different. And I think what a lot of parents are now calling homeschooling is actually distance learning.
Right. So the main difference, like the number one, like most important difference between homeschooling and distance learning is, yes, right now everyone's at home doing their schoolwork, but homeschooling, you are in charge of what your kid is learning and how it's being taught for the most part. Distance learning, you are using the public school system from a distance and doing what they're telling you to do. That's the main difference.
So if they tell you today we're learning about George Washington, you sit there and do the assignment that they give you. Meanwhile, if you're doing history at home, you could be like, all right, we're going to learn about the ancient Mayans because
exactly.
There's a special on Netflix.
So, like, let's say distance learning program says that you're going to learn about the Civil War, and you're going to learn about it by listening to your teacher lecture and then take a test on it.
Yeah.
Some kids
I would fall asleep and then fail the test.
Right. Some kids will learn better. Most kids will learn better by choosing how do you want to learn about the Civil War? Do you want to make a Lego building out of Legos that shows a Civil War enactment going on? Do you want to go to the Civil War reenactment? Do you want to read some books from the library? Do you want to read a book that takes place in the Civil War?
Watch Liberty.
Watch Liberty's Kids, yes, about it too. It's like there's all different ways that you can learn about a subject without you having to sit and listen to a lecture. I chose the Civil War because I enjoyed history growing up. It's one of my favorite subjects to do growing up. So, I mean, there's all different ways you can do it. So basically, distance learning, you follow the rules and the lessons, and a lot of times in distance learning, you will have to do like a Zoom meeting several times a day with different teachers, especially when you're like in middle school, high school. Your kid could be in a Zoom meeting 4 or 5 times during the day. And to me, that's a lot of sit down, staring at a screen time. And,
it is. It can be, yeah.
And just because your student is sitting there in front of the computer listening to a teacher lecture or talk or watch a slideshow, it doesn't mean that they're retaining what they're hearing.
Yeah. And I know the girls that I used to nanny in Florida, they're doing distance learning now because Palm Beach County has extremely high COVID levels. They're sort of tapering off now, but the school district was like, we're not playing this game. We're just going to do distance learning for the fall. We'll figure it out after that. But they have to log in to, I think it's 5 or 6 classes for a Zoom meeting. And for some of these classes, it's like 20 minutes, and then they go do an assignment. And the teacher's basically just there to be like, you got any questions? Sometimes it's a lecture, but most of the time it's like, look, the assignments are already online. The videos are online. I can stand here and read it to you, but it's a better use of your time if you go read it, and then the next class, when we log in, you ask me questions.
Okay.
But it's still a lot of sitting there and logging in, and the gaps between the classes are scheduled the same way that normal classes would be, other than the ones that end short. So you could have as little as 5 to 15 minutes between classes, which is not enough time to go take a break. They do have a lunch break, but it's not enough time to go do something else. So it is still at times up to 4 hours straight in front of a computer. And I mean, I have to study for immunocytochemistry next week. I can't study for 4 hours straight.
So I find it hard to sit down in front of a computer for 4, 6, 7 hours a day. I can't do it. I mean, your brain starts to go mush, your eyes start hurting, and then you're just tired of sitting there in front of the computer the whole time.
And then you're just staring. You're not learning. You're not actually engaging. So, I mean, for a lot of kids, the distance learning, and that's assuming, of course, that you have no processing disorders. If you have a auditory or visual processing disorders, Zoom meetings are not a viable option.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I understand the appeal of distance learning because then you're not in charge of your kids' education and choosing what they're learning. But on the other hand, having your kid in front of a computer for that long, it can play with their behavior. Maybe you don't want to have your kid in front of the computer, or maybe you just don't have access to a computer, especially if you have more than one child in the house going to distance learning.
There's an entire town in Texas that actually recently had to give the entire town free Wi-Fi because they almost arrested two kids in front of a McDonald's because they were sitting there using the Wi-Fi to do their homework because they did not have access to Wi-Fi at home. So they were sitting there at a McDonald's doing their homework. So the distance learning, all of the schools are trying to do the best that they can.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that it may or may not be the right fit for your kid. And sometimes you don't have an option. If you're working full time, you may not have the option to be like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to homeschool now,
Right. Yeah. And another thing that's important to know is, yes, your kid's at school for 6 hours, let's say, 6-7 hours a day in public school, but you can get the same amount of work done at home with less time because it's not switching to 7 different classes. It's not having a classroom full of 30 kids or however many kids are in the class these days. And then having to, talk to all the kids, make sure all the kids are on task in the class. You can just tell your student, all right, so today we're going to study these vocabulary words, and this is what we're going to do. And then it could be done in like 20 minutes or,
because again, you can cater to the way that they learn best, and you don't have to wait for the other kids, which sounds mean, but it's like, well, you figured it out. We have to explain this all again to another 30 kids. It's like, I'm sorry, it's faster when you're doing one-on-one. So you had a resource we were talking about before, if you were going to choose and remember, these decisions can be temporary. If your kid is struggling with distance learning and you have the option, or if your school is going back to session in person and that is either a health risk that you can't deal with, or if your child is having problems with anxiety because of that, because a lot of kids they pick up on what we're putting down, so they're little sponges for anxiety sometimes. So if you're considering homeschooling, Stephanie, you had a link to the laws per state.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now, and then I'm going to post it in the comments over on YouTube.
The laws per state?
Yeah. All right. Sorry.
No, I do the same thing every time. I forget that the volume's on somewhere else, and then I'm just like, oh. Yeah, but that was one of the big things, is that a lot of parents that were doing distance learning that didn't involve Zoom, or were trying the homeschooling thing, they were like, my kid's done in an hour, what more can I teach them? And I don't know where you stand on this, but I would caution against trying to fill 6 hours of the day, because homeschooling does go so much faster because of the individualized attention, and they can go at their own pace. So if parents are trying to add on, I would say educational activities like games or videos, sure, but I would strongly advise against trying to over school your kid, because they're just going to be tired and frustrated. And then they're going to be done with 7th grade by the time they're 10, and they're not going to be allowed into high school when they're 10 years old, because
right. No, exactly.
That's the thing.
There's no behind, at some point, your kid might be behind in math or reading or whatever subject have you, but eventually by the time they're done with school, they're going to be where they're going to need, they're eventually going to read. They're eventually going to be able to read on their own. They're eventually going to be able to write a paragraph. They're eventually going to be able to learn how to study properly. Eventually it will come to them, and not every kid is going to read at the same age and the same rate. My kids didn't.
No, and that's why I'm really glad they switched from grades to Lexiles, because the Lexile system's a little confusing sometimes, but it's when you say that your child's reading at a 4th grade level and they're in 2nd grade, it can have an effect on the kid, but especially when it goes the other way, when your 4th grader is reading at a 2nd grade level versus saying, oh, he's at a 750 Lexile. Because they don't internalize that. They don't know.
No, they don't. So I shared a link on YouTube, but it didn't show up as a clickable link.
Huh.
Because I think you have to add me as or change me to a moderator, and then it'll show up as a link. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that's entirely possible.
Do you know how to do that?
Well, if you're in the chat, you want to just pop in and just type hi. and then I can click on you and give you a wrench.
Oh, okay. Like in the private
in
chat?
the YouTube chat, yeah.
Oh, in the YouTube chat. Okay.
The technical aspects of this are always interesting.
All right.
There we are. And okay, I've given you a wrench.
All right.
Use your power wisely.
Let's see if it works again. Hold on. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So that link will bring you to a web page where it's the homeschool laws by state. So it has a drop down menu, or you can click on the map and you just click on it, and it'll tell you what are the steps you need to take to legally homeschool in your state and what's required. Some states require you to teach certain subjects. Some states require you to teach like citizenship or state history. Some states don't care what you teach. Some states want you to do testing at certain grade levels. So it changes per state. Let's see here.
That's such a strange thing to explain to my friends in Sweden. It's like, oh yeah, my grades are this, but if I was in California, they'd be this. And like, why?
Oh, okay, gotcha. Is that where you're from originally, California, or
no? But we have another girl in our school who's from California. We're the only two Americans.
Oh.
It's 1/3 Swedes, 1/3 Austrians, because that makes sense, and 1/3 the rest of us weirdos. So we've got Sudan, 2 Americans, England, Norway, 2 India, 1 China. I'm forgetting someone. No, I think that might have been India. It's a little bit of Russian roulette.
Gotcha.
Because it's an international degree program, but so it is. If anyone needs help studying biology, I'm your girl. Unless it's exams, in which case go away.
Gotcha. So the map that shows up on that website, it has the states color coded, and so there are several states that no notice is required. If your child is already in school, you have to tell your school district in unenrolling them, but you don't have to tell them you're homeschooling. And you don't have to register your student as a homeschooler or student homeschooler. Like in Alaska, Texas, Oklahoma, Idaho, and then some of the Midwest states like Iowa, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, and then New Jersey and Connecticut, of all places. There's no notification required. That you're just totally on your own. And then there's some states that. There's a lot of other states that have low regulation, moderate, and then high. Some of the
high seems to be like New York kind of area.
Yeah, New York, Pennsylvania over there is where you might have to go. In fact, I have a friend that lives out in Pennsylvania, and she says that when she homeschools her kids, she has to turn in each year all of her resources she's going to use and her plan of study for every subject, all the resources, what classes her kids are going to take, and then at the end of the year she has to have it evaluated by someone with an education degree.
Yeah, and I think that's the one that we hear a lot about, and I don't know if it's because there's more homeschoolers in New York or if it's just because the amount of work and regulations involved makes it more people click on the link more, like, oh, look at how complicated this is.
Yeah.
But if you're in any of those other states, especially like we've got California as a low regulation state, and considering everything that's happening right now between what we've been calling the beverage bug and the wildfires, for some families, homeschooling might be a better fit or at least worth exploring, because again, remember, these are all temporary. You can pull your kid out,
you can
and then in the spring and be like, well, this didn't work well for us.
Let's put them back in.
Yeah.
So, and then there's like a happy medium between public school and distance learning, and that's charter schools. So it's also, technically it's a public school, but so the way the charter schools work around where I'm at is they have 1 day a week where your kid goes in with other kids around their same age and grade level and do certain classes like a math class or science or like a STEAM or a STEM class or an art class. And then the rest of the time they're at home doing the assignments with you. And then you just
Yeah.
check in every couple of months with a teacher from the charter school. And a lot of parents do charter schools because they give you a certain amount of money per semester towards buying curriculum that they don't have themselves,
Oh,
or
okay.
towards like extracurricular activities. But right
And
now,
I know that's one of those things that changes a lot state to state. All of the education changes state to state, but
and then I mean, right now I feel like it's kind of pointless right now to do a charter school if that's your goal, to have like interaction once a week, because one, most of the schools are not doing that, at least around here, because of the beverage bug.
Mhm.
I like that. I'm going to pick that up now, beverage bug.
We've been using it just because for a while certain videos were getting shut down anytime they said it. I don't think they're doing that anymore, but I prefer to remain on the air so we can give the lovely people all the resources that they want. And then the other one in Florida is there are actual, as opposed to distance learning, where your kids in the same school they were in last year, they're just doing all their lessons at home on a computer, or homeschooling where you're sort of taking on the role of teacher. Florida also has free virtual schools that are a part of the school district. Now, this doesn't really solve the screen time issue because it's virtual, so it is all on the computer. But for a lot of them, there's no mandatory class time. So it's sort of a digital marriage between distance learning and homeschooling. So the kids are sort of, depending on the school, going at their own rate. And because it's a public school district, they are 100% free. So if you have older kids and you're not necessarily, like if you have a high schooler and you're not necessarily comfortable with teaching, 10th grade physics classes,
Right.
that might be something that if your kid is struggling with the distance learning, or if you're going back to school in person, but the situation isn't ideal, that might be worth exploring. And I know what the situation is in Florida for those. There is a list you can actually get online. I will look up that link and pop that in the chat. Oh, Keshe says hello. Hello, Miss Kelly. And she is doing her crochet chit chat in a little while. I actually have the reminder up. It starts in 2 hours, 9:30 my time.
All right. I'll have to stuff in. I mean, I have a quiet house. I might as well. There'll be no
Yeah, you might as well
background
take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah, so in Oregon, there's an like the Oregon K-12, which is basically the virtual school that Florida has. It's a public school online for free.
K-12 is the company that runs a lot of these.
Yeah. A lot of those online schools, at least over here in the West, like in Oregon, Washington area, there is a wait list now because so many people were coming to them from being public schooled.
Yeah. And I sort of expected that, but I think that's still something worth checking out. And I am going to throw up the website for Niche, which is a academic resource for finding schools. And they have not just virtual schools, but they have charter schools. They have the listings on the actual in schools, college prep programs, stuff like that. So they're a really great resource for finding people.
Okay.
And they do more than just Florida. They are for all 50 states. I can't verify them for the other states because obviously the only one that I've worked with in the past is Florida.
Gotcha.
But it does. So when you do homeschooling, I know some homeschooling programs do have actual meetups and things like that. So how has the beverage bug affected sort of what you're doing, or has it affected it at all?
Yes. So a typical homeschooling school year, yeah. Right? We have there's a lot of local homeschool groups here, but there's one main one here where I live that we've adopted one of the parks here. And so we go every other Thursday and we spend like a half an hour cleaning up the trash, and then we get together and play. There's like a trampoline indoor park that we go play at every other week. There's indoor climbing gym. There's skating rink, skate parks, things like that. And library times. There's like in the spring, we usually have a homeschool science fair. Like last year, one of the students did a display on the Madagascar hissing cockroach.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So
was
that was
down
fun.
for the science until you
Yeah.
said hissing cockroach.
So like there's a lot of activities and get-togethers and, you know, field trips like the zoo or the museum, but now a lot of those things are not happening right now. I mean, in Oregon right now, the parks are open and you can go gather at the park, but with like less than 10 people in a gathering, and you have to wear your mask outside all the time in Oregon. It's just mandatory now. And so a lot of our families have resorted to doing like Zoom meetings, like getting the kids together and playing with Legos and then showing what they built, or doing a show and tell on their pets.
On their pets.
So there's more interaction with kids. But so there's a lot less social get-togethers and interactions because of the beverage bug. But it's also forced us to be creative in ways to interact with other students and families.
Okay, so yeah, that's and I think that's something that if you're just going into it the first time might be confusing, because I know especially when you start something and they're like, but this isn't how we normally do it.
Right.
It gets a little bit confusing, but I've seen a lot of things. I've seen the Zoom show off your pets, and then a lot of zoos and aquariums, not just if you're homeschooling, but just in general, have been doing virtual guided tours. And of course, there's all the famous TikTok and YouTube videos where they let the penguins go out for a walk because the zoo's empty, so why not?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think, you know, one silver lining to this whole thing is that a lot of learning opportunities are coming up online, and they've been there, but these companies are showing that they're like broadcasting more often, advertising, I guess you could say, as opposed to keeping it a secret. Not really a secret, but it's harder to find. It was harder to find these a year ago as opposed to now, when everyone's looking for resources for their children. Where, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like everyone's looking for like some way to learn math easier, or some way to learn science easier, or a reading list. And before, these were things that you looked for in the summer, you know, to sort of keep the kids busy, and not necessarily just during the school year, because that was what the school was doing. So these are up to date as of last summer, but I do have lists of the resources that I recommend for summer learning for things like STEM and STEAM, things like math, and reading recommendations. But I also want to mention that if you're looking for educational stuff like this, a lot of libraries in some areas are still closed, but they're closed. You know, like there's a librarian in there. So the library by my house was closed for a long time, but you could call the library, give them your library card number, pull out 2 to 4 books, and they would leave them in a plastic bag up front, and you just called when you got there.
Yeah, so our libraries here were closed for the longest time, but now they're open for limiting browsing. Like you can go in for 30 minutes at a time and browse, but you can also just go online and request books.
Yeah.
And another thing is, I know in our state, you can request an educator library card, which allows you to check out more items at once and also have them out for 21 days at a time instead of 2 weeks. So
that's nice.
And all we need to do is show proof that we're homeschooling. So that's always, you know, something to ask your local library, wherever you may be at, to see if that's something that they're doing.
Yeah, I think libraries are a really great resource, and they're really underutilized. I mean, there are librarians there. They are there to help.
Yes. So our library here has created it's called curriculum crates. So it's like a big crate full of 25 to 40 books on a particular topic. So
I think I've seen something about this. Yeah.
So instead of you like going, okay, we're going to learn about the Oregon Trail, we have to go find all these books and resources and try to find good ones that have credible resources in it, it's all
Mm-hmm.
compiled in there for you. And it's like fiction books, but storybooks. And then there's actual like books that are like research material, encyclopedias, lots of pictures, and like first primary resources in there, things like that. But they have them all for all different types of topics, like spring, animal explorers, whatever. So that's what our library has started about a year ago. So that's handy, because then you don't have to spend time finding all of it yourself.
Finding something and then verifying if it's a reliable resource. Because the problem that I always had when tutoring was, particularly with social science, you would get to a subject and it would be like what's the nice way to say whitewashed version of history?
No, I get it. I know what you mean.
Yeah. And it's like, no, we're not going to be reading from the book that describes the Trail of Tears as people volunteering to leave because the newcomers wanted to build there.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that was in a book. I screamed for probably longer than was necessary and may have freaked a kid out, but it's fine.
My problem is, I'll check out books and I'll start reading it to them, and I'm like, oh, there is this horrible typo in it. I can't do this.
Yeah, that's definitely a writer problem where we're like, well, they spelled that wrong.
Or like it was, it was supposed to say sky, but it said stare instead. I'm like, that is like a horrible, and it was
a big thing to miss.
Yeah. So, but
and it gets worse too with this is the one thing that I always say is that if confused teachers create confused students, if you're not good in science and you're trying to recommend a textbook, if science isn't your field, you're not going to realize that this is a bad resource. It's kind of like recommending a Spanish book if you don't speak Spanish. And all it's going to do is confuse the students and then get them frustrated when they're like, but this one said.
Right. So another thing is like, homeschooling, even though it says home in the name, it can be done anywhere. And, parks, libraries, when things are open.
Yeah, depending on what's open, where you are, if anything's open.
Right, if anything's open. But another thing is, there's a lot of resources out there, support groups out there, even Facebook. If you just Google homeschooling or homeschooling in Oregon or homeschooling in Africa or homeschool, wherever you may be, there's going to be a lot of resources out there. There's a homeschool group called Homeschool Freebies, and all they list on Facebook in that group is lots of free resources for whatever subject. There's a lot of free resources out there available, so you can always go into support groups and ask, hey, does anyone know what would be a good book or books for me to get from the library based on this, or what's a good math curriculum for someone that learns this way versus this other way. And also, if you connect with a local homeschool group, or if you know other people that are trying to do this homeschooling thing, just ask, hey, what are you using for history? Can I take a look at what book you're using and see if my kid would like it for a week? Because in my experience, most homeschooling families have no problem sharing what they're using.
And especially when you have to start piling on purchased resources, sharing stuff is huge. So local groups like that are great, but even the broader groups. The thing I would say about Facebook groups is sometimes there's a vibe, like, not all moms get along together. So try out a couple. Like, don't try one that, well, I didn't really fit in and then leave. Like, try a couple and see what groups you mesh well with, what groups are sort of more supportive towards what your ideals might be. And like, I'm a member of a group on Facebook called Nerdy Parents Unite. They're not specifically a homeschooling group, but they are hands down the coolest parents I have ever met. Like somebody was commenting about how to get their 4-year-old to wear pants. And the universal response was, we're not leaving the house. Why does it matter? Let him run around naked. He can put on pants next year.
Right.
And the mom was like, well, fair point. We'll just stick to pajamas. It's fine.
Right. Doesn't matter.
But that's what matters. Find a group that you can connect with and that you can rely on. And if it's a local group, that's even better, because then you can share like actual physical stuff.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And then, if if you're routinely part of a group that meets, that
Hmm.
that used to meet, and you don't meet anymore, you always like connect with the people that were in the group. Let's
Yeah.
say it's a church activity, or if it's like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or any of those organized things, you can always connect with the parents and ask them, what are you guys doing for school? Like, what's your plan this year? And if they're doing homeschooling, you go ask them, like, what are you doing? Can
Yeah.
you film?
There was a group, I can't remember what it was. It was when you said Girl Scout or Boy Scout, you made me think of it, but it wasn't that. I think it's orienteering or something. Basically, the kids were doing a lot of outside activities together previously, but you can't do that right now. So now what one of the parents did was go around and do a scavenger hunt in the park. And then the kids had a Snapchat tag race where they had
Oh,
to, because they were all on Snapchat already. Obviously, this doesn't work if you're not on Snapchat, but they were all on Snapchat already, and they would have to go to the spot and take their picture with the thing on the scavenger hunt before they moved on. And they staggered it in such a way that, like, you were racing against the other teams, but you never saw another team except, like, maybe in passing, like, oh, they're going to the soccer goal. Well, hurry up. We got to get to the fountain.
okay.
And that was a really cool concept because it sort of allowed for in-person real-time interaction in a fun, competitive way, but obviously without any contact at all, which for this group was particularly important. One of the kids was immune compromised, but you know, like you need to do something, otherwise you will rip your hair out of your head.
Yes, yes.
So we sort of covered the difference what the homeschooling resources are and the differences between the two. And I've listed a couple of different, those are actually lists of resources. One is for math, one is for reading, one's for STEM, but there are plenty else out there. Do you have any in particular that you really like?
Um, yes. So, all right. So there's this one website that I like. It's called Homeschool Share. Have you heard of it, Eve?
I think I've heard it mentioned in group chats, but I haven't ever checked it out myself.
Okay. So they have unit studies based around different topics, and then they also have printables called lap books. Have you ever heard of lap books?
Lap books. Is that an acronym?
No. So you take
Okay.
like two different, like like a regular file folder,
Yeah.
like for put files in. You take two of them and you like kind of glue them together, so it's a big book that opens up. And then you have like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
little mini books that you glue and like write information about it in
Yeah.
there based on whatever topic it is, or if you're studying a book. So it's good for those kids that like the cutting and the gluing and the coloring. It's another way to take notes about a topic. But they
Yeah, one of the girls loved those, but they called it something else. They called them flip books, but it was the same sort of thing where they were basically assembling their notes in a physical, visual way.
yes. So like they have unit studies and their groups. So there's one for like toddlers and preschoolers, all the way the one a group for kindergartners and pre-kindergartners and like young elementary group, and then middle elementary, and then they have one section on chapter books for like ages 7 to 12, and it uses chapter books and units that contain more lessons that stretch the unit over a longer period of time rather than like a few days or a week. And then they have ones for like independent study, and then they have a unit study that's all based on animal studies. Like, let's say you're doing animal classification. You can preview. There's a preview, and it has like all the pages that you're going to be using and cutting out and stuff. And then you can download it to your computer and save it for another day or print it out. So this
that's nice.
So this one you would have to have access to a printer to use this particular resource, but there is a lot more other resources available that you don't have to print anything out, such as, where did it go? It's called free books, free children's books. So
Freebooks.org?
freekidsbooks.org. Yes.
Yeah, I have them listed in one of mine because they were great. They it's not a huge selection, but
No.
there's plenty on there to fill an afternoon, or
Yeah.
a couple of afternoons.
Right.
Yeah.
So I like
I
that
read
one
fast.
because if you can't find particular books from the library, or if they're on hold a long time, you might have some luck using the freekidsbooks.org.
Mhm.
And then, I don't know, like, there's another one called, I have so many, I don't even know where to start.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of the website called Hippocampus?
I feel like I've had to use it before.
So
I can't remember what it was.
So it's all free educational resources for middle school through college.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've had to use that before.
So it's a lot of different topics and a lot of different resources that they pull, but it has like 7,000 videos and like 13 different subject areas.
Wow.
So you can go through there and just look to see what is there that you might like.
I wonder if they have one on immunocytochemistry. Help me study for my test next week. And then we talked about Khan Academy before. I think most people know Khan Academy, but I'll throw it in there just as it's valid for, especially if you're as a parent are not great at math. Although I will say some of the Khan Academy lessons are better than others, but it's always a good place to start,
Yeah.
because they do have like every subject of math listed.
Right.
Like statistics, geometry, they're all in there.
So I'm just going to put in some links of the different resources that I've routinely used. There's a lot.
Yeah.
So this next one is called Teachology. Have you heard of that one, Eve?
Again, I spend way too much time on the internet to remember these names, but yeah.
Okay. So Teachnology, it has worksheets. It has them grouped by different topics. It has printables. It's all free to use. So you can just look to see whatever, if you're doing it on your own, you can look to see what you might want to use. And if your child needs extra help in an area, it might be useful to have an extra resource available to you.
Sorry, I just remembered where I know it from.
Where do you know it from?
The older child that I tutored hates math with a passion. She went through a phase when she was younger, though, that she really liked playing school, to the point where when Miss Eva came, I would be sent home with homework packets.
Oh.
So she would print out she would create lesson plans for me. And as long as it was something that she was supposed to be learning that month, we let her do it. So, yes, teacher, I still have some of your worksheets that you sent me home with. And I just, when I saw the word with the hyphen, I was like, that was in the bottom corner of my homework. So I had to do a lot of worksheets on math for a very long time.
So another resource I like, it's another homeschool parent. She created a blog and she has all these resources on there. And there's a lot on there that are free to print out and use. But she also has a store that you can buy like PDF files. So there's this one that I would get if I had a printer. It's called Road Trip USA. So you take a road trip to the United States, learning about all the states and geography and like what they're famous for. But this link that I'm going to be sharing is her free printable section. It's called Confessions of a Homeschooler. And she also has a YouTube channel as well.
I know the blog. I didn't know the name, but I know Confessions of a Homeschooler.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm glad that I'm sharing stuff that you're familiar with and not like, I've never heard of that.
Like, who is this person?
Right.
What are their credentials? Like, no, these are mostly names that some of them are a little more niche, so you don't necessarily find them if you aren't like looking. But when you tutor for 10 years, you tend to look. So, sorry. One that I like because we would have problems when the kids got tired. It would be frustrating to sort of get through a lesson plan. So we'd take a break to either go do some kind of physical activity, or if it was like later in the evening and we were like winding down for dinner, we'd put something on the TV, in which case there's a bunch of STEM shows on Hulu and Amazon. We were talking about Mythbusters before, but there's also a YouTube channel, which I hate the name of, but it's called It's Okay to Be Smart. And they have a lot of little 5 to 10 minute sort of science, animal facts, things like that.
Okay.
And they're all cute animations. So some of it's too advanced for them to actually get, but it's interesting enough to be like, oh, science is not completely boring. That's nice.
All right. That sounds interesting. I'll have to save that one too. Another blog that I've used in the past, the blog name is Plain and Not So Plain. And she's compiled all these free resources for like kindergarten through like high school. And she's very laid back. So for someone that needs a lot of structure, that probably wouldn't be good for you. But if you're more of a laid back,
like just
you don't need, like, feel like you don't need a ton of workbooks and a ton of books to teach a subject. This one is like, it's one computer page a day for math, one for language arts, and then like one other subject. And that's what she does. But I've used the math portion as kind of like added review for different lessons, that because I mean, I don't know about your kids, but or the kids you've tutored, but my kids, sometimes they need a review before they get it, before it's in their head.
Yeah, that was part of why we did the school so much, because it was in the review process that things actually clicked for her. And it's sort of, that made a big difference, was just reviewing it, and not at the time, but like a week or two later. So I guess it's processing at some point, and then it just goes, okay, I know my times tables. But there are plenty others out there. So I also have a list of the tips from other sort of homeschool moms. So if you are looking for more blogs or people to follow, you can check them out there.
So the latest link I shared, it's a YouTube channel. It's called Free School, and they have a lot of short videos on a lot of different topics, like solar system, 10 fastest animal runners in the world, sharks, like, and they are not long videos. They're like 5 to 10 minutes long. There's even one about different alphabet letters, exploring the ocean. There's even some easy read-along stories in video format that you can read along. There's even American history for children, and they're all short videos that would be good for kids that don't have a good attention span, or even kids that don't want to sit there and watch an hour-long video to learn about the solar system. So
those are key, having those short form videos, either to fill gaps or just, you know what, they're getting frustrated. Okay, let's switch gears, you know. Having those short form resources is great. It's the same with It's Okay to Be Smart. That was how we used them, was just, you don't want to sit there for half an hour. You just want 5 minutes.
Right.
And then to be done.
So another website I'm going to be sharing is called greatschools.org, and they have a lot of good resources on there. This particular page is all of their printable worksheets from pre-K through 5th grade. So there's like 1,500 worksheets that you could search for.
That's a lot of worksheets.
A lot of worksheets. And they have one for kindergarten to 5th grade and another section for older kids. And you can also sign up for weekly worksheets and articles based on your kids' grade levels as well.
Oh, that's nice.
So you don't have to search all the time if you need to. So really a lot of this I just found by just searching, like putting in like 2nd grade math or free 2nd grade homeschooling. And then a lot of resources would come up, but it was a lot of looking at the resource, looking at it myself, trying it out. It was just a lot of trial and error, but you just got to figure out what would work for your kids, as opposed, because not every kid is going to learn the same way.
Yeah.
Some kids like worksheets, some kids like videos, some kids don't.
I think the hard part is it has to work for your kid. If you're a parent that's now taking on the role of teacher, I know that sometimes parents are like, well, I don't like worksheets. so we're going to do something else. And that can be hard to recognize. So there's a level of self-honesty required when you're homeschooling. You have to be honest, like, are you not doing this because you don't like it, or is it actually because your kid doesn't like it?
Right.
Especially when you're starting out.
So my middle daughter, she likes doing workbooks. She loves workbooks and worksheets, and she likes knowing at the beginning of the school year, this is what we're going to be using, because then she knows when she gets into this math book, she's done with math. Or she likes color, she likes animals, and she likes drawing and writing. So for her science, I bought, it's called Apologia Zoology. So it has like 3 books. Like the first, it's Christian based.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not too keen on the Christian based part of it. So she ignores the parts that talk about God in the textbook. But it has like a textbook
around that.
Yeah, it has a textbook. Like in the Flying Creatures one, it talks about how the birds fly south for the winter because God tells them to, and that's how they got their instincts. So she just ignores that part. And so she, but there's like a textbook, and you read it, and then you write in a notebook, a spiral bound notebook. You write what you remember from it. And then there's parts where you can draw pictures. And then there's like vocab, crosswords or word searches, and then there's lots of those like flip books that you can do if you want to, but she chooses not to do that part because she's left-handed and she doesn't like cutting with her right-handed scissors.
Yeah.
So
makes me a little trickier.
Yeah, so she's done the flying creatures and she's finishing up the swimming creatures one, and she's not doing the land animals. She finally chose to move on to botany. So she's going to be doing all about plants. So it's a whole textbook based on one particular topic. So it's kind of like a fun way to take notes on what you're reading.
Yeah, and I think that's huge, because I don't know if it was the same for you, but as a student, not as a tutor, but as a student, trying to figure out a way to take notes and retain information was the single biggest like breakthrough for learning, because writing what they were saying didn't work for me. Repeating definitions didn't work for me. But if you can crack that nut, and it sounds like a lot of what that workbook is doing is sort of exploring different options for note taking in different ways. And if you can crack that nut at an early age, it makes learning as a whole easier. And that's really all you want, is you want them to know how to teach themselves, because even when you're done with high school, you never really stop learning. You have to be able to verify resources. You have to be able to look at an article, understand what they're saying, understand how they might be biased, especially in today's media, and then be able to retain more than 2 words from the article. Because it really just is, it's a continual process. And so if you can crack that nut, then you know how to learn.
Right. And so like also in this notebook, it has like science experiments that you can choose to do. So I just tell her, like the first year she wanted to do every little thing. And it was a lot. So I told her this year, I'm like, so I'm just requiring you to read and write down and then draw pictures if you would like to draw pictures about what you read, like animals and water currents and things. But other than that, if you want to do anything else, you can. You don't have to. And then there's also like copywork where there's like a Bible verse for her to practice her handwriting. She likes doing that because she likes practicing her handwriting.
So yeah, my handwriting's terrible, so I can't talk.
So I just tell her, I want you to you don't have to write down everything you learn. Just write down the things that were interesting or that were new to you.
Yeah. And I think that's huge, because I know we're going back to the note taking here, but I know when I take notes, I do 2 passes. I do 1 pass where I sort of write down everything that they think is important. And then when I read it the second time through, I only carry over things that I either didn't already know, they like are probably going to be on the final, or were new, and I'm basically creating a key for my brain, like a reference sheet to trigger remembering the subjects.
Right.
But yeah, there's a lot of resources out there, and a lot of them are organized. You can find them through Facebook groups. You can find them through county resources. I don't know if they have a Children's Services Council that's active where you are, but the one in Palm Beach County is like crazy active. They created they're partnering with the Every Parent Palm Beach County app. So you go in and create a profile, for your kids by age, and they notify you when there are activities. They notify you when there's different things going on. They give you reading and learning suggestions and all the rest of it. So, I mean, there's stuff out there. It's just a matter of not getting frustrated when you get 10 million results and figuring out how to narrow it down and find the ones that work for you and your kid.
Right. So this next resource I'm going to be sharing, it's from the website 123 Homeschool for Me, and the particular page I'm sharing is Homeschool Free Printables, and it claims to have over 1 million free worksheets on this website. So, I mean, it's a lot. So a lot of times what I'll do is when I have time, like in the summertime or whenever I might have time, I'll go through and I will bookmark all these websites that I might use. And then if I know, let's say coming up is Halloween, and to make it more interesting, I've downloaded like Halloween themed, like math pages or Halloween themed, like science stuff. And so they're still learning, but it's around a holiday.
Yeah, and that helps applying it to what's going on.
Yes.
I miss Halloween.
Is it not a thing there?
No. Even without COVID, they don't do Halloween in Sweden. Not really. Anyways, it's shown up in enough American movies now that, you know, you'll see people having Halloween parties, but there's not kids, there's no decorations, and I'm not going to be the only person in Sweden that puts a skeleton on their front door, because then the neighbors are going to get freaked out. But we're coming up on it. Well, we're over an hour. We're sharing a lot of great resources, though. So what else do we have? And if anybody has any particular questions, please make sure that you comment them so we can answer them.
So there's a website called homeschool.com. They claim they're their original homeschooling community. The link I'm going to be sharing next is for their free printables and worksheets for all grade levels. You know, I find it hard to find free like printables once the kids are above like 6th grade level. So it's just a matter of just looking to see. And, you know, just because your student is like in 7th grade does not mean that they're not going to be able to get some use from something a little bit younger than them. Like,
and I think after 6th grade is where things like Khan Academy or OpenStax. I forgot about OpenStax. It's a textbook resource, but it's mostly like high school and college level textbooks. So that's I actually used that to review before I started my master's, because there were areas that I got to class and I realized I didn't remember as much as I thought I did.
And then the next one is mathbrills.com. It's just free math worksheets of anything: addition, division, decimals, graph paper, number lines, percentages, time math. My most favorite part of math, story word problems. And then they have themed math worksheets like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, seasonal math worksheets. They have flashcards, even a Sudoku math game. And there's even a unit converter to switch from like metric to not metric, whatever that is.
Standard.
Okay.
The U.S. calls it standard. And it's not. They're the only ones that use it. To be clear, it's not standard. Metric is standard.
So this next link is not for worksheets or stuff to print out. It's for discovery.com. You know, like the Discovery Nature website. There are a lot of free like articles and resources on here that would be good for middle school on up. There's not a lot of things for younger on this one particular website, but I like it. My kids like it. Even my younger 7-year-old likes it, but he likes learning about a lot of different things.
Well, and what I found with Discovery is we got the Disney membership, but the girls are too old to care about Disney movies. But we got the Disney's membership because of the National Geographic aspect. So we would one day a week, usually they get to pick a show, but one day a week it's my turn to pick, and I always pick the National Geographic special. I tried a few on engineering. They were not at all interested. When I picked the ones on animals, however, all of a sudden somebody's paying attention to flamingo migration. And so that's a good way to sort of combine like family time and like movie night with a little bit of learning, especially for older kids, because sometimes they don't want to be there to begin with. When they're in that preteen stage, they're like, I don't care. But you know what? The crocodile jumps out and eats the alligator. Either they're going to freak out or they're going to go, that was cool.
All right. So I know that I shared a lot of resources where you can just like find it and print it out and do it on your own. But if you need some like a guide of what they should be doing, there's a few different like free online lessons that you can do, like totally kind of like Khan Academy has different topics or subjects.
Yeah.
There's another one called Moby Max. Are you familiar with that one, Eve?
I think so.
So
I
there's
remember Moby. I don't remember Max.
Okay, so there's a free version of it, and you just have to sign up for an account, and then you like add students underneath your name, and they have topics from every. They have all the subjects. They have anything, even from like kindergarten, first grade, like to learn your phonics and your letter names. They have math, social studies, science, but it's a lot of like the science and social studies. There's some videos, but it's a lot of like reading and answering questions. The free version used to be able to see like where they started grade level wise, and then as they progress, what grade level they ended up at. But they don't include that anymore in the free section. You'd have to upgrade to the paid version. But the free section I find beneficial anyhow, even if you can't see where they started and ended up.
Yeah. I think I remember this, and we got to the registration page, and we assumed there was going to be a credit card involved somewhere, so we clicked away.
Yeah, so this one
there is a free version.
Yeah, the free version, yes. And I think I've used it for about 3 years. And Jackson still uses it for like his science topics, because right now it's all about animals, and he likes animals because his sister does. So we do that.
What kid doesn't like animals? Animals are awesome.
Right. I mean, if you wanted to upgrade, you would be able to like get like transcripts and get like the progress reports every month. But I feel like if you're homeschooling your students, you see what they're doing on the computer, or if they ask for help, you would know what they're doing. But
yeah,
and the Moby Max only goes up to 8th grade. It doesn't do high school.
Okay. Do you happen to remember how much it is for the paid version?
It starts at $7.99 a month.
Okay, so at least it's not bad. So it's one of those where, depending on the contract, you might be able to try a month and see if that's something you're interested in. Like try a month free, try a month with the upgrade, and then just be like, well, that wasn't worth it.
So if you've never used it before, you can do a 30-day trial that has all the sources available, and then after that, it would remove the upgraded version portions of it, and then you would be able to know what you would like or didn't like about it.
Well, that's really, I like it when they do that, because like sometimes certain things are restricted and you don't know if you need them because you've never used them, so you don't know if they're worth it.
Right. I don't think I have anything else.
Oh, really. You only had 25?
Only 25. I could do more. So yeah, those are all the free resources, and I like free resources. And another thing that would be, beneficial is you could always just do like homeschooling blogs, and then follow the blogs. And a lot of times blogs will have free resources, or like in their newsletter, subscriber freebies, and you can, compile them into your computer as you download them, and then as you need them further on down the line, you would have them. So you're not always searching the night before your kid is wanting to learn about pirates or something, and then you would have available.
That's nice, especially if you can organize them by grade too, because I found this great resource for 9th grade math, but my kid's in 6th. Like, well, just save it, put it in a,
organize your bookmarks or download the free things available, and it would be there for you to use later on. Let's see.
Yeah,
I don't have anything else right now anyway.
It's always moving and it's always changing, but I think we covered a lot. I think we covered a lot of good stuff because it is a very sort of confusing area to navigate. So knowing whether or not distance learning or going back to school or trying out homeschooling for a year is the right option for your kid, especially right now. I think this is as good a time as any if you were ever considering it to sort of explore that, especially if you're struggling with distance learning, because it is a lot. In some cases, it is a lot in front of a computer, and in some cases, it's not. And maybe that's working fine for you, in which case, awesome. If you're looking for more activities to do with the kids, we've got a list of we've got a list of resources on the side. I hate that the camera's flipped.
So, and the one more thing I wanted to add is, okay, so I know like a lot of states have switched from not Common Core to Common Core.
Yeah.
And so there was this website, World Book Encyclopedia, that used to have all of their plan of study, a typical plan of study for the United States, what they would be learning in preschool all the way to 12th grade. And then when it switched to Common Core, it changed all those things to like standard number 4-3-2. And so it was really hard to like understand like what that meant correlating to what it was before. So, but in Nevada, they their homeschool network in Nevada has uploaded what it would say pre-Common Core. So instead of like in kindergarten, it would say like holidays and traditions, but now it'll say understand and grasp the concepts of blah 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 blah. So this one, the one I'm going to be sharing, I like looking at just to see in general what different grade levels would be touching. And so if you're kind of lost, I find it as a good starting point just to see where you might need to be headed. And you know, there's nothing wrong with if you choose to do Common Core related curriculum, but if you want something in a little bit more plainer English rather than standardized numbers,
I think the Common Core, the biggest problem with the Common Core is that the parents, the language can be confusing at times. But a lot of times what I'm seeing from the tutoring angle is the kids learn half a lesson in the Common Core system, and then the parents try to help them. But because the parents haven't learned it the Common Core way, then the parents get frustrated. And I just want to say that if that happens, do not be afraid to tell your kid, I'm struggling with this a little bit because I learned it a different way. Let's see if there's something else that can help us. Like, whatever you do, even if you're frustrated with the Common Core, please don't be that parent that's going to say, this Common Core is so stupid. I don't know why they make you learn it like this. Because all you're teaching your child is that they don't need to listen to their teacher and that they shouldn't bother.
I mean, I can understand why it's frustrating to go from like 12 plus 14 and then add the ones and carry it over to the tens column and add the tens column. Now they're like, you know, let's say it's 10 plus 14. You would do 10 plus 10 is 20, and then 2 plus 4 is 6, and then you add those two numbers together.
Yeah.
So
that's how I learned how to do math, but that's because my dad's Swedish. They've been doing Common Core, but they don't call it that. They've just been doing math that way for years.
Right. So, I mean, I can understand why it'd be frustrating. So, you know, like my youngest son has never been in public school, so he just learns it however it's learned. He learns it. Although it's weird. He's great at like multiplication. He's great at carrying, and he's great at those lovely like logical reasoning grid story problems. Not my kid. I don't know what happened there. No. My kids are oddly good at math. I don't know how that happened.
Don't look at me. Math is a language I do not speak, but it's just frustrating sometimes as a tutor because you see parents struggling with material, and rather than admitting that they're struggling and looking for resources, they will tend to plow forward. And I think especially for parents who are, you know, haven't had to take on that home teacher role before, that can be a lot. It can be like, no, I should know this. It's like, why should you know this? You haven't taken geometry in 15, 25 years. And having the expectation that you should know this is unrealistic, and it's just going to frustrate you.
And there's no harm in like learning it alongside your student as they're doing it. there's no harm in saying, well, I'm not very good at trigonometry, but so and so's parent is really good. So what if that parent teaches you math and I teach you guys history or whatever? Whatever.
Yeah.
You can always trade, do it that
Yeah,
way.
share the load and sort of admit when you're struggling and when you need to learn. Because I think that's one of my big things is that showing kids how to learn. So like with the older girl, when she struggled with math, a lot of times I don't remember it. So I'm like, okay, what are you stuck on? Show it to me. I'd sit there with 5 minutes and be like, okay, I'm not sure, but I think I found a YouTube video that explains it. You were in the lecture. Let's watch the video and see if this makes sense based on what they said in the lecture. And most of the time going through those steps with her. So now she gets stuck in math and she's like, I'm stuck with, oh, never mind. I got it. I found a thing. It explained it.
Yeah.
And learning how to make those steps for yourself.
Don't be afraid to use outside resources. Ask for help. Ask other people that you know, other parents that you know, to see if they have extra resources or what works for them. Or let's say, oh, my kid's really having trouble with fractions. What really helped? And then, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to outsource stuff if you need to or if you can, depending on where you are.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't try to rewire your house if you weren't any good at electricity. You would hire an electrician. If you're not good at math, don't be afraid to be like, well, maybe we should find someone who is.
Right. So, funny side story, me and my husband, we sold our house and moved in an RV for the first time. We never camped in an RV. We never used an RV ever. We just went all in,
You went cold turkey into the little home life.
Yes, which I didn't mind because I got rid of a lot of the kids' stuff. Crap, really, but stuff.
Yeah, the decluttering is great.
Over the course of because November will be 2 years. In the last 2 years, I've learned stuff about plumbing and wiring and propane usage and electrical usage and how batteries work, things that and how to service the air conditioner on the top of the RV because I'm afraid of heights. So I had to conquer my fear of heights. There's things that, you just learn as you need it.
Lifelong learning. It's a constant process. Sometimes it's trigonometry. Sometimes it's how to reroute the angry, growly demon that lives in the sink and eats leftovers that I forgot the word for.
So, I know that once the kids get to algebra 2, I'm done. I didn't go past algebra 2, and in college, I got to algebra math 111, and I took that class 3 times.
Yeah, that was about my level. That was about my level.
But my husband, he was homeschooled, and he went all the way up to calculus and trigonometry homeschooling. So, but he works in the IT computer industry. He does cybersecurity, building websites, building servers, all that fun stuff. So math is his language. So
that's his jam.
You can look at a random math problem with my daughter's bad handwriting and say, oh, that's right, or that's correct, or wrong, or whatever. I have to sit there and work through it.
Yeah, that was always my problem. I have found though that I'm better at explaining subjects that I struggle with because I had to find my own way to figure it out. Things that I'm good at, like writing, I'm terrible at giving writing advice. That's why I don't do it for AuthorTube. I'm not, I don't know. I sit and then words.
I've always had a thing for grammar and punctuation and stuff. So when I connected with this author in a Facebook group, a homeschool Facebook group, and she was looking for someone as the second editor, I was like, I'll give it a try. And I've edited 4 books for her. The first book, I felt really bad because I edited out the word that. She said that, or he felt as though that 199 times, just that one word. She used it a lot.
Okay. She's just really fond of that.
Yeah, she said that, or it sounded as though that. It was just that.
That's so important because writers don't realize that when they're doing that.
No. I used Grammarly the other day on the book that I'm writing, and it edited it. It said, you use this word a lot, the word really. There's always that one word that the writer uses frequently.
Yeah, and you don't see it when it's your own writing. But so you are a writer, and so you want to tell the lovely people about what you're working on?
Yes. So it's my story. It is it's been in my head since I was 17, and is a story about how my parents were living apart. And then we went to go visit our dad. And then our dad says, "Oh, I don't know why your mom didn't show up. Sorry, we're going to enroll you in school." And then a few, shortly after that, he told us that our mom had passed away, and that I was 9 years old. Over the course of him being an alcoholic and him being abusive towards us when we lived in Reno, and other various not happy childhood moments, but interspersed with like happy childhood moments, moving around a lot. I found out when I was in foster care when I was 16 that our mom was still alive in the same house that she lived in this whole time. So it was a story about like going through all that negative stuff, and then finding out our mom was alive, and then how that affected me now. So I read a few books like the boy called It when I was younger.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that one, and a couple other books kind of around that same thing. So like the story has been in my head since I was 17. So I wrote it. Like in April, I finished it, but I didn't finish it. Like I
You
thought
finished part 1.
I thought I finished it, and then I realized I needed a new first chapter that showed what typical life was like. And now I'm like redoing the middle, because I'm an underwriter. Like I finished it at 40,000 words.
Oh, yeah. So that's not well, I mean, it depends. If you independently publish, that could be done, but for a traditional publisher, that is lower. But you talk about all this on your channel.
Yes.
How often do you do updates? Or do you not have a schedule?
I'm not on a schedule. I'm trying to do an update like at least once a week. It was just like August was just a bad month for me home-wise. So, with everything going on with the fires, and then with, lots of kids starting school back up again. And then my daughter was in the hospital for about a week with swollen liver. She's fine. We don't know what happened, but she's back to normal. Her liver enzymes were elevated, and now she's okay. They think she might have like autoimmune hepatitis, where it just attacks your liver randomly.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, all right, well, we'll just keep an eye out. So when I was posting, I was doing like weekly updates, and like in July I did a weekly vlog for the Camp Nano thing. I'm trying to do at least once a week video updates.
Okay.
I'm not really a like advicey person, like tell you how to write. This is what I'm doing, this is how it's
just
going.
Updates on your progress. I think that's great though. So if people do subscribe to your channel, they should definitely click the bell then, because you're not on a schedule. That way they'll get a notification whenever you do post.
Yes. I wish I could be on a schedule, but between kids and home life and my own autoimmune thing that I have going on, I don't have a schedule. It's just hard. So like one kid's super smart, the other kid's whiny a lot, and then my middle child, she has autism and sensory processing disorder and auditory processing disorder and anxiety. So there's days that it's more focused on her, and then there's times where my energy level is bad and I can't talk properly because I have multiple sclerosis, so sometimes that flares up. So there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, no, you have to sort of take care of yourself first, I always say, and then create healthy boundaries. YouTube is great, but your body needs you more.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I have a second channel as well, and that one I posted a lot more when we were traveling around in our RV, but my writing channel, I'm just trying to do at least once a week. That's what I'm going to try.
Okay. Are you still posting it all on the RV channel?
Yes, I did one about what I'm using for homeschooling, and these are materials I'm using. So if you want to check them out.
You want to go ahead and link that in the comments below the video, because I think we're going to close out the chat here in just a bit. That way people can check that out, get more resources.
Yeah.
And then, is there anything else you want to add before we say goodbye to the nice humans?
I don't think so. I don't know. I mean,
it's not a trick question, I promise.
No, I have a YouTube channel here. I have another one. I'm working on a blog. And I'll link that in the comments real quick too.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
All right, perfect. So you can check Stephanie out at both of her channels, whether you want to follow her writing journey or her tiny living RV country ride dwelling homeschooling journey. And then, of course, you can check out me. This is my channel. I'm Eve Daniels, the Nerdy Nanny, and I write about kids' books and sort of the process of getting published, but I also talk about the fact that I am a grad student from Florida, currently living in Sweden, and everything that entails. And next week, because I posted the first 2 weeks of grad school, and everybody's immediate question was, how come you're never wearing a mask? So apparently I need to address that. So I will be updating you on that situation and why I'm not wearing a mask in Sweden. Spoiler alert, it's because we have really low COVID numbers and it's not recommended. But yeah, well, you can check out more details. I'll show you what it's looking like in Sweden at that point. And I will see you all soon.
Great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh.